People of the world, welcome back to Send It Rising. I'm Kellen Kautzman, our guest today. As you've heard me say many times on the show before, I don't believe in coincidences. We have had one of the most fantastic conversations backstage. He and I have a lot in common. Have you ever wanted to have your company acquired? Well, if that's been a dream of yours, or it could be something that you could get to, so where you could dream about it eventually, well, then you're in for a treat. His first company, Doorbell, was acquired by another company, Revenue Zen. Both of those brands I think is super cool. He is a B2B, I would say, lead generation expert. He prefers the term demand gen. We're going to dive into what that means. And his nickname is Magma. What does that mean? I don't know. We're going to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Ken Magma Marshall.
Hey, Kellen. Thanks for having me. And yeah, as always, I never know what to do with my face until these intros start. So glad to be talking.
What I used to do is have people like not have their face on the show, and then I would click and add them, but Restream mutes them. And so for technical reasons, you have to stand there and just have your face be there for the world. If you're interested in seeing Ken's face, youtube.com/Send It Rising live, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ken, from whence does your nickname come? Let's start with that. Why Magma?
From whence and how? Okay, so me and the founder, one of the co-founders of Revenue Zen, were out at brunch, as you do. I used to live in Portland, Oregon. It's a pastime on the weekend with my wife, and we were having a very philosophical conversation. I was like, "Hey, man, if you had to be some constellation, some body in the universe, what would you be?" And he gave me some very Alex poetic answer. And then I was like, "Now, what about me?" And he's like, "I think I'm going to go more of an earthly body." Ken, he's like, "You're sort of like a volcano or magma." He's like, "You're sort of expansive and powerful and flowing, but if you keep going and nobody stops you, you might hurt the rest of us." And I thought that was so beautiful because he's like, and Kim, who's my lovely wife, you're sort of a calming agent. You make sure that he's cool and collected, and that's spot on. So that's how I got the magma.
Very yin yang. So, as part of this acquisition deal, because you owned an agency called Doorbell prior to your current role with RevZen, let's say, um, how did that come about? How did you meet the folks? Walk us through that negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is it took a while, months, wasn't easy, but definitely the right decision, and I've been enjoying it ever since. But I went to like a sales meetup at a WeWork, and Alex was giving the presentation, and I knew what he was saying. I did it for my own company, but I was more impressed by him, and I was just like, "This is a cool guy. You want to go get a beer?" And we talked about, I think poetry and other sort of things related to marketing, and pretty instantly I was like, we need to go hang out. So we grabbed a beer, we started talking, and we realized back then they were doing pure lead gen. So not really like SEO or content strategy to the level that we were doing it. And that's all I focused on. I didn't focus on LinkedIn or lead gen. People generated leads through SEO, but it's really focused on top, middle of funnel. And so we worked together as partners for about 10 clients. And at some point we were like, this doesn't make any sense not to do this in a greater capacity. We didn't know what that meant. So we lived at the same apartment building, which was very serendipitous. We did not know that when we met. And we had a lot of conversations on the rooftop. And after a while, we're just like, we found a number that was right and a timeline that was right. And, we've been off to the races ever since. So.
I love that for a number of reasons. First of all, he was giving a presentation. So, listeners, you never know when you present in front of people. It's an
Yeah.
amazing sort of serendipitous, like what could occur. That's incredible. The fact that the things that we do outside of our business life, like have an interest in poetry, somehow become a partnership. Like, what the heck? How does that work? You had 10 clients together before you sort of joined forces. So, it's not like you just jumped right into it.
Yeah.
You did
We
some work.
dated before getting
Thank you.
married.
I was going to say getting business married. Getting
Yeah.
business married. And so part of the deal was that you were going to go work for this company, Revenues, and that was, a larger sort of deal. Did you have any sleepless nights about like, ooh, like I'm really scared about this. I don't want to. I do. I don't. I do. I don't. Or did you feel confident from the get go?
No, I was, yeah, I mean, literally sleepless nights. So that's what I do when I ruminate over things. If my brain has a problem without a strategy, I find it hard to go to sleep. I talk to my wife, I talk to a mentor, I talk to, my parents, even just um, a lot of different things to try to understand. As a business owner in the beginning stages, that was only my third year with Doorbell. We had a good run rate. I was making good money, taking care of myself, but you have a lot of fears, and some of those fears and like burnout things can push you in the wrong direction out of a scarcity or I'm done with this. And I wanted to make sure I was doing it from a place of strength and confidence and calmness versus going away from something. I wanted to go towards something. So yeah, a lot of sleepless nights, but not towards the end and not since. So
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about fear. So, if you're just sitting there or you're having a conversation with me and a thought enters your head and it's a fearful thought, what tactics do you employ to deal with those?
well, at first I don't do anything. I've learned because I don't I'm not the most like emotionally expressive person or in tune with those things. I never have been, so I'm learning. Especially shout out to my lovely wife. Like I said, she's an empath, as the kids say. And so the first thing I do is nothing. Like literally, I don't do any action because I'm so prone to taking action that sometimes, and I'm very risk averse. I almost have no capacity to understand risk naturally. I just sort of do things since I'm very reckless. So I just kind of sit with it, maybe for a day, maybe two, maybe for a week. And then it's a more formal process of like journaling and talking to Kim and saying it out loud for a bit more, just again to make it more concrete, less abstract in my head and my heart. And then typically I'll map out an actual solution, but it's almost like weeks after I had that initial feeling to make sure it's sunk in. I've done something reasonable with it, and then I can figure out the next step of an action. So that's usually the process for big decisions or fears or whatever. So
Interesting. Yeah, that's quite the like the spreadsheet based fear attack
I'm a
approach.
spreadsheet kind of guy, Kellen. I'm a systems thinker. I'm a spreadsheet kind of guy by trade. So yeah.
That is interesting. So let's go back in time to Ken in elementary school. Were you
Oh.
that sort of spreadsheet thinker back then too, or did you find yourself with a different personality?
Oh no, I use my powers for good. They're not as destructive these days, but I learned this word when I was in high school. But I was a very neurotic child. I just didn't know it. And the best way to illustrate that is something my mom told me. Like I was in kindergarten, and you're doing like arts and crafts, finger paints, whatever. Everyone's done. They go outside to recess. Ken is still in the class, like ripping it up because it wasn't good enough, even though art can't be good enough, right? And so I always say like that's how I used to think. Everything was a problem that needs a solution, and I'm good at mapping problems to solutions like very efficiently. And so I was neurotic a ton, and I didn't understand that you have to suppress that, and it has to ebb and flow, or else it'll sort of consume you and you'll always be miserable. I'm not these days, but yeah, I have the natural tendency to be very robotic in my thinking. So
That is very interesting. Do you find that that robotization, which is definitely a word,
mhm.
is a benefit to the team that you're currently on?
Yeah, I think when I was gonna do sales, and I like it was a winner of a sales competition at college. Then I switched to marketing because I wanted to do marketing instead because sales didn't seem like either a business I wanted to start when I realized I wanted to do that, and it was seemed a bit soul sucking, even though you do lots of sales as a founder. I think I think I moved into the direction of SEO because it blends like art and science with a lot of science, at least in the beginning. And so when I went to RevZen, a lot of what they were missing of like some of those deep SOPs, like standard operating procedures, systems, automations that scale, and really I'm laser focused on effectiveness. I mean, in dollars and cents for our clients. Like we don't measure clicks and keywords. Those KPIs are fine, but return on investment is what I'm laser focused on. And so I think I brought that clear strategic direction, those processes, and that systems thinking. And they taught me a lot too on the other end of it. So
So are you saying that SOPs help with KPIs for better ROI?
yeah, and you can LMK once you got that figured out. So
ASAP. We're laughing, ladies and gentlemen, because backstage we're talking about all the acronyms that are involved, and the further down any path you go, the more you tend to use acronyms. And so, little inside joke there for you. Um, have you seen Ted Lasso, the show on Apple?
I have not. I don't actually. I know this is going to sound very pretentious. I don't actually watch a lot of TV. I don't actually enjoy watching a lot of TV, and so I've heard good things though. I do want to watch it, but I haven't.
It doesn't sound pretentious at all. It sounds honest. And the only reason I mention it is the protagonist is this sort of
Love Jason
coach.
Bateman though. Yeah.
Sorry.
I love Jason Bateman. I'll just say that. He's a great guy.
There we go. So the reason I mention it is because there's this yin yang dynamic between the head coach and the main assistant coach. And the main assistant coach understands all of the tactics, all the plays, the history of the teams that they're facing, all of this nuance of the game of football, as you would say, obviously in Europe. And then the main head coach is just emotional guy. He's making sure everyone is fine emotionally, that their head's in the right place. He can tell when the dynamics of the team are off, but he doesn't realize that Sheffield Wednesday is the name of the team and they're playing them on Thursday. So how could they be on Thursday when it's Sheffield? No,
Yeah,
Sheffield Wednesday is the name of the team. Like he doesn't know those things.
for
And
sure.
so I get a lot of this assistant coach vibe from you because he's got just all of the tactics on lock. And without him, Ted Lasso's an idiot. He literally is an idiot even without
Yeah.
him. But you add
Yeah.
this, he's called Coach Beard to it, and then all of a sudden Ted Lasso shines and he can be seen as brilliant and this sort of thing. And so, do you find that you're more or less comfortable in that sort of leading the charge? Let me show you the spreadsheet of why exactly this is operating. The more robotic tasks, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I just realized that I said Jason Bateman instead of Jason Sudeikis,
I
the main
wasn't gonna
character.
correct you.
I'll correct myself. But anyway, now that that's aside, I think it's a bit of a healthy mix of both. Like one of the reasons, again, that was an allure to RevZen is like there's three other executives, myself included, and they're beautiful humans. Rocky is what his name sounds. He's the COO. He keeps everything like in line. Me and Alex are sort of balloons that are floating up in the clouds, and he makes sure that we're going and pushing towards the future. But you can't live 5 years ahead all the time. Somebody's got to live the day to day or tomorrow, and Rocky does that. Fitz is the emotional, sort of cultural glue to the organization. Fitz is like this amazing human being who's our chief experience officer. Alex, CEO, finance guy, has a very strategic brain, but also like myself, he can balance both. So I would say, even though I did bring that structure in some of those systems and scalability, um, we have a lot of sort of complementary angles between the four of us. And I feel most comfortable when I'm innovating and pushing the limits of what I think is possible for myself and empowering others to do great things, right? So sometimes that might be I automated a process that was frustrating the strategists. It might be, building out our own lead gen funnel because, maybe our leads this month were a little bit less than over the last quarter. It might be stepping in to close a big deal, even though we have our own sales rep right now, because I have that unique expertise and way of talking. What do they call it? The je ne sais quoi. So I'm pretty comfortable in a lot of different situations. I could be comfortable speaking to a group of 10,000 or working on, coding a site for a week straight. My energy fluctuates, so it's kind of unique.
That to me reminds me of just ownership, right? So you're taking that owner because you had to do those things as the owner
You
of
have to.
of
Yep.
Doorbell. You didn't have a choice. And now the RevZen gets the benefit of that sort of ability to do multiple things. If you were a D&D character, you'd be a multi-class character, nerd, tip of the hat.
Okay.
And
I'll look that up after this.
yeah, exactly, right? Just how nerdy can we get? And would you describe the team at RevZen as more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or more Power Rangers?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. That's so tough. I think we have like as a company, we'd present as like the Power Rangers once they're in their mechanized like robots. But personality wise, we are definitely Ninja Turtles, like temperamentally. So yeah.
I see. And which turtle are you?
Um I think what's the is it Raphael? Is that the red one?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. I think I identify with him most if I remember correctly, but it's
nice.
been a while. So
Yeah, so Leonardo is the leader, Donatello is the nerd, Michelangelo is the party guy, and Raphael I can never remember. He's like
I
the
thought
he's
he
like
was just Mr. like I don't know. I thought he was
maybe
like
that's why I can't
Mr.
remember because
Calm
he
and
just
collected. Yeah, but
yeah. He's got size, which are great.
yeah.
So chief growth officer, I find that particular title at, in one breath, like it's obvious what it is, but in the other breath, I'm like, it's not obvious at all. So why that title? And what does a chief growth officer do?
Yeah, it was intentionally chosen not to be specific, and it is ambiguous, and I like that. And so I'll sort of explain why I chose it, and then what traditional organizations use it as. So growth is usually a function of sales or revenue operations. So if a lot of VPs of growth will actually be in charge of sales and revenue operations, essentially, which for up until a few months ago, Alex and I, the CEO, were the only two people that have ever sold any deal for our companies, which is just insane. But we wanted to make sure we had such a tight process and a good product that a human could come in and take the inbound leads and just off to the races, which is rare in sales. And so sales was a part of my job. In fact, I architected a tool that helps us sell our sales process. I helped build it for the new sales rep. But I also love to build tools. So we're building our own software as an agency. That's fun. And we've got a LinkedIn product and now SEO products. And I'm informing the strategy of those, right? So we've got sales product and then what a traditional CMO would do. I redesign the whole website experience, our clutch ads, our own SEO, our own content marketing. All of that is like my brainchild. And I like being in between those spaces because the point of all of that, whether it's automating a process that the strategist takes 6 hours to do down to an hour, but making it more effective to use their insights, that connects to our customer success, which affects our sales, which affects our lead gen on Clutch because we get better reviews. So my brain still sits at the intersection of all those things, and I didn't want to lose that. I like working on interesting, difficult problems, and I figured if we made my role more siloed, it would disincentivize that to happen. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
So the interdependence of the varying points that make up the pointillism art that is RevZen is something that you're like, it doesn't matter what point you're touching all of them, right? Because you mentioned CMO, building software, and you're one of the it's very rare, right? It's like finding a graphic designer who's also a good web designer, or an SEO that's good at pay-per-click, or I don't know, insert other disparate skill set. So how do you maintain those skill sets without getting rusty on one or another?
Yeah, so I have felt myself like, obviously as you go wider, you can't go as deep. So I'm obviously not in the day to day of Google's like latest algorithm update like I used to be. So one of the things that I try to do, I read every day in sort of different areas of interest. Like it's more management these days, but I still read. You know, Brian Dean got acquired, but I'll still read when he updates something on YouTube. I still know, when HubSpot publishes an article, right? So there's part of it that's keeping up, but more importantly, I don't need to know all of the tactics or the tactical deployments. In fact, that would be a bad use of my time these days. What I try to stay up on is, am I thinking am I thinking in a way that's big and bold and useful that'll lead to higher degree of effectiveness? So actually, I don't want to be at any one of those points. I want to make the intersection wider as often as I can between all of them. So that's what I got to stay sharp doing. But yeah, I mean, some things like title tag lengths, I'm not going to remember that stuff these days because it's, not a good use of my time, at least as a leader. So yeah.
I get it. My staff right now is doing schema markup, and I'm like, local aggregate. Okay, let me look that up. Okay, got it. Local aggregate schema. I will mention that in the next time I chat with Marcus, the personal injury attorney.
For
Um,
sure.
Big, bold ideas. I'm all about that. I feel like going back to that conversation we are having about fear, that the ability to have mental kung fu or spiritual kung fu, you
Mhm.
could say, gong fu as
Yeah.
translated is just hard work, is more and more the domain of leaders within organizations as the company grows. So, do you find yourself doing less but thinking more? Or are you doing more and thinking more?
Yeah, I have the bad misfortune and maybe a blessing of I like to work. I always have. It brings me joy, it fills me up. But what I've realized is that I find myself getting sucked into certain day-to-day activities that even though we have a really good org chart, we understand our responsibilities, I'll just jump in to help because that's my heart. And so what I've had to do is like learn how to like essentially unstructured time on purpose because like I've got a full calendar that's color coded and I have things planned a week in advance, but I've had to sort of leave space to just think in an unstructured way to keep that up, right? To keep those big, cool ideas, because I'm naturally good at that, but not if I'm already doing, 8 million tasks that day, right? So I limit the amount of time people can block off on my calendar and meetings. Wednesday, I literally just sit and think of cool new stuff for revenues in. I don't do any implementations. I just think of stuff. So yeah, I've had to learn how to do that. But my natural tendency is to like do more stuff, but now it's like zoom out and think a lot more. In fact, getting paid to think is essentially my job these days. So, sounds
That
weird, but yeah.
bingo, bingo. If you could go back and talk to elementary school Ken, who's doing that art piece, and the other kids have left for recess, and he's still there, what would you tell him?
Oh man. Um, Dude, go play outside. The problem will be there when you get back, but you can't get back the quality time. I mean, I've spent most of my life learning what the heck self-care means and how to be a well-rounded human being. I was always sort of, I think, destined to be an effective human being at something that's just in my DNA. But what's success without any sort of like well-rounded life? I've learned, there's all these depressed millionaires, right? And so I changed course right around the time I met Kim, which isn't a coincidence that I needed to do more of that. So that's what I'd tell him.
If you had to describe Kim and your relationship, who's the yang energy and who's the yin energy? Or are you both balanced somehow and the balance makes everything great?
That's fun. That's a fun question. Kim is a calming energy in the sense that she's very fluid in what like makes her happy and what makes her smile. Like I am chronically underwhelmed by things and I want to do bigger and newer and different. And she's like, I'm happy doing this. I'm happy doing this. I'm happy everything. I'm just with you. I'm just happy. So I love that. And she grounds me in that way. And with her, sometimes that risk tolerance that I mentioned that I have innately, she's very risk averse in a lot of ways. And so sometimes I'm like, hey, you know what? We're going to do this together. This is actually really fun and the switching cost isn't that bad. So let's go for it. And, we make a really good team that way. So it's sort of a constantly in motion balancing in different ways, which I think if we talk to a lot of good couples, they'd say the same thing. So
Mm. So I think chronically underwhelmed is a good title for something, a piece of art. It could be a band. It could be a song name. Chronically underwhelmed.
therapy
And
session
then,
title.
sorry.
I said probably a title for a therapy session is what it sounds like.
Welcome to Send It Rising, where we do therapy with business owners. So I kept changing the name of this company or this show over the years now. It's been years because I couldn't find what it was. It was marketing as a foreign language forever, but then I found that we didn't talk about marketing because I find
Oh,
that marketing is like a set of tools, right? That's what marketing is. It's just a bunch of tools, and then you can talk about what you create with marketing. So I could have guests on the show and talk about, tell me, walk me through a marketing thing you did recently and what you did for this certain client. And that's interesting. But what I find more interesting is that the way that individuals, business owners, and leaders mentally find their way and find balance and happiness in their life is just it's just delicious, right? Like going back to like when you're younger and making connections, those sorts of things. And so it just became I should just call it Cinder Rising therapy session. So now
I
that
mean,
you go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No,
I was
please.
gonna say just that I don't I think, if however many early founders out here, like that's another one of those, please underline this, bold it. The great sort of barrier to a lot of my success that probably could have accelerated things is me just not feeling at peace or having a well-rounded life or spending time in the morning to get my day right of prioritizing activities. And so they say like at the early stages, the business is only able to do as good as the founder's like well-being and mental state. And so I think that's one of the truest things that anybody could ever say, which is there is that direct link between this is how you get your mind right and yourself right, and your business can't do anything but flourish, right? Granted, you're not doing anything else shady. So I love that. It's so true. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I get one of my insecurities as a interviewer or show host is I feel like I have to pose a question And I'm learning that doesn't, I don't need to do that. I can just say something and then just stop talking, and the guest will always come with something. It doesn't have to be, but this isn't
Yeah.
Jeopardy, right? You can just say
What is
things,
answer? Yeah.
right? So yes, not feeling at peace, and the external ramifications of those as business owner is I guess what I deal with mostly, or what I tend to think about a lot. So I appreciate you saying that. So let's talk about the future of RevZen. Okay. So 3, 5, 10 years from now, you can pick which what year you want to pick. Where are you at? What are you doing? How did you get there?
Yeah, 5, 10. I can speak to maybe myself, and my own personal life. We honestly we honestly move really quickly, and we're lean in how we think, and we don't mind changing with the market. Them going from like lead gen to being an SEO company happened in 3 months. That decision for us happened in like 3 months, right? So I mean, that's crazy. That's insane. Like your whole business model, all of that book of business, that's more than some agencies like make just that line of business in their entire year. But for us, it was clear the writing was on the wall. So in 3 years, we do have a few products out now. We've got our social selling intelligence tool. We've got a social selling course. We're building SEO tech now. I think we'll be more of a SaaS company with an agency arm. We might, downgrade one part of the business, upgrade another part. All I know is that we're going to continue to build technology that serves our internal operating system for our strategists, and then that serves the clients that they can use directly and self-serve in a way that's cheaper and more repeatable, particularly for early stage companies. We help out a lot of SaaS. 5 and 10 years, yeah, I couldn't even say because we probably wouldn't accurately even be able to guess. I mean, again, our growth rate is nuts, and it isn't slowing down at all. It looks kind of cool actually. So yeah, it's like it's a cool curve if you look at the chart in Salesforce. But anyway, so that. But then in my personal life, like I have dreams to start a nonprofit, and me and Kim want to start a business together. I've always wanted to own a little coffee shop, something I can walk into every day and it's tangible and be around people as well. And, so who knows?
Ooh, exciting. Very exciting stuff. The ideas that we have in our minds are things insofar as we can measure them. We can measure the thoughts in our head. They're starting to create robotic arms using thoughts that are really useful, obviously, for a number of people. And so I like to think of my mental state as just the driver of my reality, right? It's just what I think is eventually what. And to give myself some slack, and I hope you do the same for yourself, is like when a fearful thought comes in or a negative thought, it's so easy just to brush them off. It's when I believe they're real. And I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll call it a day. My daughter came home not too long ago, and she said I put chocolate that had some nuts in it, and nuts aren't allowed at her school. And she said, "Well,
Oh,
the teacher, made me go sit at some other part of the classroom or at the lunch area." I was like, "Oh, I feel terrible. I felt awful." Then later that night, she said, "Oh, I was talking to like Emiliana, whatever, at lunch," and I was like, "Excuse me? You were talking to who?" She's like, "Oh." And then what she had done was she told me her fear as if it were real. She expressed that thought she had in her head as if it had
oh,
actually happened, because it did happen. Thoughts happen to
yeah,
us. And so I said, "Well, honey, that's a lie, right? Because it didn't actually happen, but I know what I understand that fear." And
yeah,
so real is what is experienced, right? And so
sure.
that's Zen right there. And that's why I love that you got the Zen in the name of the company. I mean, it's like people often romanticize Zen. Zen is painful. Like if you look at a lot of these like Japanese like
Yeah, and
hardcore Zen,
practice. Yeah, yeah. Oh
oh,
yeah.
they're like, you don't move, your legs go completely numb, you're in so much pain. If you move, they hit you with a stick. And then,
Yep.
did you ever get into Alan Watts?
No.
Oh, check out Alan Watts. Go do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Go to YouTube, type in Alan Watts, listen to his stuff. But he did all that. He did the Zen, the Zazen, whatever. And one of the things he talked about that I absolutely love is if you ask a Zen teacher a concrete question, they answer in a very philosophical way. And if you ask them a philosophical question, they answer in a very concrete way. So if you say, for example,
Okay.
"What'd you have for breakfast?" They'll say, "Who are you really?" And then
Yeah,
if you say like, "Who am I?" They'll be like, "I took a walk this morning."
right.
And
How do
and
you
they'll
brush your teeth?
yeah, exactly. You say, "No, you see how and so the basic premise, and then they'll give you these koans, which are impossible to answer. And then when the student finally doesn't care what the teacher thinks anymore, they'll be like, "Okay, do you have the answer to the koan?" This is like after like 6 months of brutal punishment. Do you have the answer? They'll be like, "Dude, I had some eggs this morning. They were okay. They weren't great. They needed more salt." Then the teacher's like, "Bingo, now you're onto it." Because you won't
Yeah,
let me mess with you anymore, right? You were
for
so
sure.
gullible before, and you were so, so I'm reminded of that just talking to you, and I wish you the best. I'm so happy for you, and everything
Thanks,
you're
man.
doing with your company. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill. YouTube.com/Send It Rising. If you want to see me barefoot longboard on the TikTok, that's at Send It Rising, delivering social media news. 10,000 views on the Instagram post yesterday. Very excited about that. Please do like, please do follow. Our guest today, Ken Marshall. Ooh, I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. I want to make sure that Ken has a chance to tell you all where to go if you want to chat with him. Ken, take it away.
Sure. Two main things. I'm on LinkedIn, Ken Magma. You can just type that into your browser. Google will do the rest. That's where I sort of share thoughts and we can just chop it up. Second, if you're a company, I still do strategy calls, and that's not a sales tactic. We jump on a call, we do 2 hours worth of research, and then I give you some stuff. And if those implementations make sense, you either take them and go do them and live off, happily into the distance, or we can talk about us doing it for you. But those are the main things. And yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. This is cool, and I feel more zen because of it. So
Yay. Ladies and gentlemen, when folks offer things on the show, trust me and take them up on it. Take them up on it. If they're offering their time, Ken's time is probably $150, $200 an hour. You're going to get
a
like a
thousand.
400. It's $1,000 an hour. So you're getting $2,000 of value, which you should absolutely take. And he's in a great relationship. So he's a solid dude. He's got the yin yang all figured out. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for swinging by the show. We'll see you.